to suggest that, for example, the sort of ideology critique that is engaged in by critical theorists, right, who are unmasking the logic and the rationale of capital and how it comes to infiltrate the very way that we think and the way that we live and eat and breathe, that sort of ideology critique is vacuous and insignificant and unimportant. That's not the case. The view is that it's one-sided. It's one-sided. And while you are engaged in things like ideology critique and masking the ways that, you know, the way that we have come to be expected to live our lives is in cahoots with the forces of global capital, while engaging in that critique, right? And those sorts of critiques are useful and beneficial. Also examine the very real activities of organization and struggle that are still taking place even today, even in these United States of America, and certainly everywhere else in the world. So it's not either or, and if I paint it as an either or, then that's not really accurate. It's not either or, it's both. Both. But start with what's actually going on in real people's lives. Not, for instance, theories about how people think and how people act. Begin with an analysis of the way that they actually live their lives, what they are doing, what their actual hopes, desires, wants are, what they want to change, what maybe they are struggling in order to change. Does that make sense?
If I may. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but again, it seems that Lenin's critique against ultra-leftism and Luxemburg and Kaczewski also applies here. If we were to find out what people in this valley, for example, right now really hope and want and what they dream of, I would imagine a big chunk of that would for Mexicans to get out of America. And that is a real, I mean, the people who are most anti-immigration are working class Americans. And as a matter of fact, one of their hopes and dreams is to not have Mexicans around anymore. The very fact that they're working class, and I'm not saying you say this, but I mean, this raises theoretical problems, right? Which is sometimes the working class, because it's under capitalism, doesn't want progressive things. And so it seems that, yeah, to a certain extent, we need to know what's going on. For example, imagining that we have a PLA of several million, you know, hidden Maoists that will pop up and save us if we rise up against the government isn't realistic. But where's the fruitfulness in, you know, for example, publishing a journal, a diary of workers who are alienated at their job? Like, every job I've had is alienating, and I don't need a special, like, journal to tell me how terrible things are, right? I don't need to see special outrages, at least for me, under capitalism. Like, capitalism is outrageous enough as it is. I mean, so whether the purpose or intent of that.
Yeah, but that's entirely consistent with Italian left and autonomous thinking. The notion that nobody needs to be taught by the party, for example, that things suck. Nobody needs to be told that. We all already know it. What we need to do is to help people who think that things suck, who think that it sucks that they're living paycheck to paycheck, that they don't have any damn health care, or if they have health care, they're in danger of losing it as soon as somebody gets sick. You don't need to tell people living in those conditions, even if they're blaming it on the damn Mexicans. I find that if you just talk to people for like 5 minutes about the issue, like an issue of illegal immigration, they will recognize the fact that, you know what, it actually isn't us versus them, right? And they contribute to what's going on in my community to a much greater extent than I'm willing to admit at first blush. But anyway, my point is that you don't need somebody to tell people that certain circumstances and conditions under which they live and work are crappy. What you need to focus on is helping people to recognize the ways in which they can exercise power and work together in order to try to change things. Again, you don't need Big Brother or a party or what have you to tell you what you really need, hope, and desire, what your true consciousness is, apart from your false consciousness. So it's already, people know when things suck. One of the things that they worry about, though, is the notion that things can't change. And that you can assist with, right? Helping people to recognize the actual power that they do have, in particular when they begin to organize with like-minded people. More hands, yes.
Will was first, or maybe Will.
You mentioned earlier that for this group, capitalism isn't as much about making money. That's a big part of it, but you said it also has a lot to do with exercising social control over people, the way capitalism controls people. Would those people say that?
Yeah, in the sense that it's trying to turn the entire world into you're a good wage laborer, when you're not on the job, you're a good consumer.
Right, so when people from the new Italian left or autonomous Marxists say that the way in which capitalism ends up controlling society in that way, that's something deliberate on the part of some very class-conscious capitalists, or
No,
whether
fact,
that is just simply the natural effect of capitalist economic relations, but it's not like a
result of
deliberate,
the
almost
organic
conspiracy. It's just
expansion.
a
No, there's
natural
no
consequence.
conspiracy involved in here, and in fact, it flies in the face of the self-understanding of individual capitalists who are all about, I'm just trying to make a profit for my shareholders and hopefully for myself, and reinvest part of that profit into expanding the business. I'm about making money. That's the self-understanding of individual capitalists and entrepreneurs, right? Their view is that if you look at it from the macro level, that's not what's really going on. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not just about making profits anymore, right? In fact, one can argue that it is more about exercising social control.
But do you mean
And organizing all of society in particular ways.
But in the mind of the capitalist class, that's what it's about? Or in the mind of the capitalist class, it still is about making money?
Oh, in the mind of the capitalist class, by capitalist class, we're just referring to individual people who own means of production, who own factories, who are massive shareholders in the companies, who manage enterprises. No, in the minds of those people, it generally still is generating profits and wealth for my shareholders, for myself, what have you, right? Okay. But if you look at it from the sort of macro level, as a system of social organization, what it's about is social control, controlling people in the sense of making sure that everybody pretty much lives in a particular way.
I was just curious.
They go to the job during the day, and they go home and they buy commodities at night.
Because there are some people on the left, who you occasionally hear people say things like, sports or like movies or entertainment. It's really about as if there's some conspiracy to distract people from what's really important. The fact that there's NASCAR, and I was curious if that is what you intended by that, but you answered it obviously. So
I hope that cleared you.
When you brought up technicization as a reaction, if I remember right, what does imperialism have to have? How does that come into? I mean, if I remember right, there was a simultaneous, a dual reaction. One is to technicize the workplace. The other is be it imperialism as in imperialism or economic imperialism. And
economic imperialism back to the 19th century, it plays a huge, huge role in capitalist expansion, right? The Italian New Left in the post-war period didn't really focus upon that because that wasn't really central to the Italian experience. Again, in their context, it was more what was going on in the industrial north of Italy, late 40s, 50s, and 60s. Rapid Taylorization and Fordism, right? that was taking place.